it seems like it might be hard to confirm, but the hotel you were staying at was attacked not so long after you had checked in, and you are on this hit list. And we saw what happened to Daria Dugina. I mean, she was assassinated very soon after she was placed on this list. So there obviously is an active component. It's not just some, oh, here, look at these people we're making an example of. There's actually activity around it, and so yeah, that's very scary. So I'm sure everyone here is hoping that you stay safe as you can as you do this work. Do you want to
Well,
talk
just to
about? Oh,
clarify,
yeah.
I don't know for sure that I was specifically targeted. The timing of it is extremely suspicious and certainly makes me think that, within an hour, having communicated my location on WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook, which is an extremely pro-US government website that is known to collaborate and be filled with ex-CIA, ex-FBI officers for their so-called disinformation angles, disinformation campaigns. I certainly can't prove that, but my suspicion was that yes, I was targeted, and the alternative was that they were simply targeting all journalists and not just me.
Yeah, because where you were staying is, as the Press TV report said, and as you've mentioned, that it was frequented and it's somewhere where journalists often go and stay at. Would
Exactly.
you mind maybe providing some of the context here? Because you've been covering this situation for a while. You've been talking about that this has been a daily occurrence since 2014. What happened here? Like, how did we get here? Because you've now have I guess, the fortune to speak to those who have been dealing with this, ordinary people, as well as people very active in this political process that's been underway. What's been happening since 2014 in Donetsk and in similar areas of the Donbass? And why is it important to what's going on right now? Because all we get is, oh, well, February, Russia, and this is in the Western mainstream media, of course, Russia invaded and it's a war on Ukraine's sovereignty. But it seems like that completely and utterly glosses over the reality and detaches from the reality of the situation. What have you been able to connect and observe, as well as the context for I mean, what even brings you there?
Right. As you point out, this war did not begin on February 24th. It began in 2014. It began with the U.S. backed overthrow of the democratically elected President Yanukovych. It began with the very open uh, conspiracy of high level U.S. functionaries like State Department official Victoria Nuland, and there's a very famous phone conversation that was leaked between Victoria Nuland and between the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, in which they're describing basically who should be the next president of Ukraine now that we've overthrown the democratically elected one. They say Yats is the guy. That's a famous phrase from this conversation. They're basically openly manipulating the political process and deciding, picking and choosing who is going to be the most beneficial to what we deem to be the interests of the United States. And so that has been kind of the dynamic that has existed since 2014. And even before that, in the so-called Orange Revolution, this has been kind of the dynamic that that has existed here. This is not Russia isn't overthrowing a democratically elected government. The democracy in Ukraine disappeared close to 9 years ago. There was no democracy to overthrow. There was only a coup regime, and Zelensky, who got elected first of all without the participation of the most pro-Russian populations. But those that could vote for him overwhelmingly in the East voted for Zelensky, not because they thought he was super democratic, but because he campaigned on a peace platform. He campaigned to go ahead and follow through on the Minsk Accords, right? Follow through on these peace agreements which had been negotiated between Ukraine and Russia, and even the UK and France were parties to this. And there was no desire whatsoever from the Ukrainian regime obviously coming from the US, which are the real puppet masters in all of this, there was no desire to actually honor these peace agreements. Instead, they were consistently violated over and over and over and over again. And so what we see now is basically, if you don't have to take my word for it. You can listen to people like Henry Kissinger. You can listen to former CIA directors. You can listen to George Kennan. You can listen to a number of people who all said over and over and over again, NATO expansion into Ukraine is a big, bright red line for Russia. They will never allow for Ukraine to be subsumed into this Western sphere, because for them, Ukraine is an existential threat. The last times, 3 times really, that Russia was invaded, going back, Napoleon invaded through Ukraine, Hitler invaded through Ukraine. It's a consistent theme. The West always invades Russia through Ukraine. It's a red line for a reason. And all of the higher ups, all of the real U.S. intelligentsia knew this, and they decided, you know what, we're going to do it anyway, because Russia now is deemed such a threat because it refuses to basically heal when we call, that now we're just going to try to seek regime change, and the way that we're going to do that is by weaponizing Ukraine and turning it into an anti-Russia, armed to the teeth with the most modern weapons. It doesn't even matter if we formally incorporate it into NATO, because we're just going to use it as a NATO pawn anyway, and we're going to turn it into a weapon that we can use against Russia to seek regime change, ultimately, to try to overthrow Vladimir Putin and replace him with another sort of pro-US puppet. And so this is what everybody informed in the West knew. They decided to do it anyway. They knew that it doesn't matter, even if Vladimir Putin is in office, any Russian president who is not subservient to the US would feel the same way. This is just a widely shared sentiment throughout Russian society. They all knew it, and they decided to do it anyway.